returned to her after 2.5 years away. It went to the Supreme Court in Sweden, and she was then awarded custody by Sweden as well, and we were returned to her after the kidnapping. And as she descended into alcoholism, that nothing could describe it like that music. And music is also a universal language. So in seeking to reach out to other people, I wove music into the book.
You worked with the Worldwide Church of God. Are there any good things that you took from your time with that organization?
Absolutely. As described in my book, that church saved my life. It gave me structure. Mm-hmm. It taught me discipline. It gave me hope and the belief in a divine being who loved me. There were miracles that I believe are undisputed, documented in the book. There's a high-speed chase where I ran off the road at 120 miles an hour with the police in hot pursuit, and the tracks show a car going through a light pole that is still standing at the end of this.
Oh, wait a sec. You've got the tire marks on both sides of the pole.
In black and white, it was in Alaska, and the black brake marks leading up to the front.
Yeah.
And on the other side, the tracks in the snow, right there, black and white, a car going through a light pole that is still standing.
That is truly a miracle.
So in the book, I seek to document everything with names, dates, places, for the exact reason that I wish for those things to not be discounted. They were very real to me, mm-hmm. and the church saved my life. So there were many good things I took away from it. I credit that church with many, many things. But at the same time, other people will vilify that church and its leaders and talk about how it destroyed their life. And I do not discount their experience either. And therein lies the rub. And what I seek mm-hmm. to do with this book is reach out to people and answer that question. How do you find truth in the wreckage of organized religion? Whichever religion it is that is organized by men, and it ultimately fails. It can become an idol.
But let me ask you this: before the break, or during the break, you and I were discussing that God created man in His image, right?
Yes.
Therefore, if we are created in God's image, in His likeness, then we are in fact ourselves gods.
Christ said very similar statements to what you just quoted, mm-hmm. and He quoted from the Old Testament as well. So yes, in that sense, we are gods. We are His children, and we have similar capacities at a vastly inferior level. But the creative spirit of man and what we mm-hmm. can create is actually quite phenomenal. The moving mountains aspect that Jesus spoke about. We have those capacities.
Something has bothered me for many years. Maybe you can help shed some light on it. You're a father. I can tell by talking to you both on air and off air how much you love your children. I'm a father. I'm a grandfather. When I read the Bible and hear how God the Father, who created us all, has treated some of His children, it's an atrocity. If we're all created in God's image, then the Egyptians, and how many were drowned in the sea after Moses separated them and all the Israelites left Egypt, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. And the list goes on and on and on. Why would a father do that, and how can people have any love for a father that would do that?
I'm almost stumped, but I will attempt to answer. When my daughter was about 6 months old, mm-hmm. we attempted to instill in her the fact that she needed to go to bed by herself, and she needed to stay in her crib, and we were going to leave. Mm-hmm. And we were going to leave her in there. And so she would not, her will was so strong. She stayed up crying and crying and crying and refusing and insisting.
Yeah.
And in the end, she was so sick, she was having breathing trouble,
Yep.
and practically vomiting. And I cannot tell you the pain. And we never did that again. We never tried that a particular attempt with her. After that, there was a mattress in our bedroom, and there she slept until she was 2. So it's not an exact answer, but I can tell you that the daggers were going through my heart as I was trying to instill something in my daughter.
But you tried to.
I felt was necessary.
I understand that. I did the same with our children, and I see my children doing the same thing with their children. But to kill, to devastate, to destroy, and demand love, and if you don't, I will destroy you. I'm sorry, I can't buy that.
The quick, glib theological answer, which nonetheless may have some truth to it, is the fact that God has both the power to grant and take life, and that therefore he has the capacity to ultimately do something for this creation of his that goes beyond this physical life. And I purposefully say that it's somewhat glib.
Sure.
I think it's a little bit deeper than that, but that's the pat answer to it.
All right, let me ask you one more question, and I thank you for answering me that question. But I have one more that's been troubling me as well.
Yep.
If there is only one God, number one, why in the Bible does it say, and God said, let us create man in our image? Why the plural? And number two, if in fact there is only one God, and the reference was to the Holy Spirit and to Christ in that plural reference, why is there more than one religion?
Wow. You know how to get to the heart of the matter, don't you?
Yep.
No one warned me about you.
Sorry.
So the Worldwide Church of God that I was a minister in taught, and I think many of the splinter groups from that group still teach, that let us, it's the word Elohim, which is different from the Tetragrammaton, the YHWH, Yahweh.
Yahweh, yeah.
And Elohim is a word that's used in those instances specifically because the Worldwide Church of God said it was a uniplural noun, meaning like family. I won't go into the doctrinal problems with that statement, but the idea there is that, similar to the Mormons, God is a family, and he's speaking about the family of God creating children. Therefore, it's talking about us, and it's not then a reference to the Trinity, but rather that God is a family name. There are other answers to it as well, but the more interesting question to me is the second question that you raised, that of religion.
Yes.
And it is my belief today that God in various and sundry times, as it says in Hebrews, spoke to people through his prophets, and in the latter days his Son. But there are religions that are founded with divine texts in various parts of the world. And if you go and study into those texts, which is something I've been doing in the last decade, you find commonality through these religions, and you find the spiritual principles. And as you strip past the layers of corruption, where men have built organizations and societies and structures around the core ideas that gave the spiritual energy to that civilization, but nonetheless they become corrupt. But if you strip back, you find the essence of the purity in these various religions, and like the Tower of Babel in the ancient story of man being scattered around the planet, the pieces of truth are to be found in the various religions, and you have to be open to a global search if you really want to get to the truth of the matter. And that's why my book takes you around the world, from top to bottom, north to south, east to west, in a search for the answers.
I believe that there are still answers to be found when it comes to religion. But one thing no one can deny is that there have been more lives lost in the name of religion than any other single cause.
Well, I would partially dispute that when you look at, for example, the communist regime in Russia. It's certainly a competitor, and that was an anti-religious materialistic approach. So, I understand where you're coming from, but that, I think, if we really did the math throughout time, whether it's greed, whether it's that ideology, whether it's, in what happened in China under Mao and the Red Guard,
right?
You've got a few competitors for that title, actually.
But I'm talking about throughout history. I'm not just talking now like the Crusades. We had them far and wide, and that was a horrific time in the Earth's history. And yet, when you look at what's happening now, very little has changed, and it all comes down to religion.
Well, and so where I will agree with you is this: that religion taps into what I call the reptilian brain stem. It's a concept. It taps into our deepest emotions. And again, when we get our minds wrapped around a corrupted view, so for example, we all know that Christ founded Christianity, in theory, and that he taught no such thing as, performing a crusade. So, yes, it's religion, you're right, but I don't think you can hang that completely around the neck of God.
Okay, my last question is, if Adam and Eve were the first to created by God, and then you've got Lilith, she's in between there, and then Adam and Eve gave birth to Cain and Abel. We all know the story. One brother kills the other out of jealousy. God puts his mark on the murderer. And what happens next? He crosses the desert, crosses the mountains to a town where he laid with his wife. Question, where did they come from?
Another really great question that gets to the heart and core of those indoctrinated dogmatic beliefs. Number of ways to explain that. Was the Garden of Eden a preserve from which God was going to, create a new civilization within a planet? It's my personal belief that he worked through evolutionary mechanisms and that there were others around on the planet at that time.
All right.
And that's why the mark was put on Cain, to protect him from those others.
But why should a murderer have been protected by God? Especially when God says, "Thou shalt not kill." We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone with our guest this hour, Wade Franson. He's the author of The People of the Sign, www.thepeopleofthesign.com. Don't go away now. With each new extreme weather event or terrorist act, it becomes increasingly obvious that we live in uncertain and challenging times. We all buy car insurance. Why not collapse and catastrophe insurance? Matthew Stein, an MIT-trained engineer and green builder, has written 2 outstanding books to help people prepare, plan for, and deal with everything from minor situations lasting a few days to full-on collapse. Matt's first book, When Technology Fails, is a manual for self-reliance, sustainable living, and surviving the long emergency. This massive book covers the gamut from first aid and emergency preparedness to alternative healing, renewable energy, primitive living skills, and 18th century technologies that could be critical to your comfort and survival in a long-lasting crisis. Matt's second book, When Disaster Strikes, is a comprehensive emergency preparedness handbook and survival guide. When Disaster Strikes is an essential item for every family's go bag. Both books are available at all usual sources. There's a wealth of totally free information posted at whentechfails.com, and author-signed copies may be purchased at mattstein.com. That's www.whentechfails.com and www.mattstein.com.